Hi everybody, it's Dr. Andrew Markey, consultant dermatologist and skin scientist here again. This week's video is going to cover an interesting area to do with different ways to permanently mark the skin, such as scarification, but particularly focusing on tattoos. What to do, what not to do, pros and cons. Full of interesting statistics, such as how many of us as adults in Britain actually have tattoos and which European country has the highest penetration of tattoos. All interesting stuff, and I hope you enjoy the video. Because humans are essentially a social creature, our skin is very much like a billboard. It's almost like a social passport, if you like, because not only is it important how we feel about our skin is actually judged by others. And throughout human societies, therefore, humans have tried as a species to improve on nature or alter nature by changing the appearance of our skin. Historically, the earliest examples of this are where humans have used the scarring process of the skin to produce permanent, long-lasting change in the skin. And this is called scarification. It's particularly effective on more pigmented skin types, and it's been used by many societies in the past almost as a ritual rite of passage. Particular patterns of scarring on the body and the face, often meant to indicate onset of puberty or fertility or seniority. And in some societies still, such as in Sudan and in some different parts of Africa, scarification still occurs. Scarification uses the physiological principle of either hypertrophic or what we call keloid scarring in the skin healing process. And this is often found in more pigmented skin types. It's died out as a form of permanent skin marking in preference to tattooing, which I'll talk about separately. The latest form of scarification was actually present in the 19th century in aristocratic German society, where people wore so-called sword dueling scars with pride, often seen on the left-hand side of the face, which would tend to be struck by a right-handed swordsman as an opponent. And these dueling scars would show that you operated in these aristocratic academic circles. It was actually outlawed by the Third Reich at around the time of the Second World War. But it was so important to have these dueling scars as a mark of your place in society that those that weren't too skilled with the sword itself would go to dermatologists and surgeons and deliberately have facial so-called dueling scars deliberately introduced onto the surface of their skins to help with their progress through academic and practical society. It was a mark of honour. Now, this scarification process has all but worn off, but it was very important within indigenous populations, such as Australia, New Zealand, and across Asia and Africa. But now, permanent alteration of the skin tends to be popularised by the process of tattooing. Tattooing is one of the many ways that humans have devised to improve on nature, to alter the appearance of their skin, not only for themselves, but also, importantly, for others. There's a human history-long desire to do something individual to our skins so we stand aside from everyone else. But also, it's important to not go too wild with that, because if your peer group is put off by whatever you've done to your skin, you can be ostracised and kicked out, which has been a disaster for our ancestors. So permanent marking or alteration of our skin is important for individuality as long as it exists within certain accepted norms. And nowadays, rather than scarring of the skin, tattoos have taken over as the main way to do this. Nowadays, we use organic pigments which are much safer than things like mercury and lead that used to be used in the past to tattoo the skins. But at the moment in society, tattooing is becoming increasingly popular. In fact, in a YouGov poll carried out in 2022 across Europe with thousands of respondents, it was found that up to 26% of UK adults do actually have a tattoo. And even more interestingly, the European country in which tattooing is the most popular is actually Italy. Tattoos can be relatively straightforward, just using India inks and needles, so-called self-applied or amateur tattoos. The good thing with this type of tattooing is they're relatively easily removed if you change your idea about the tattoo. Dermatologists using energy-based devices, lasers, can remove these tattoos quite quickly. But this is in contrast to what you might call professionally applied tattoos by tattoo artists who, if they use multiple different colours, can produce extraordinary works of art on the skin which appeal to some people. But if that appeal wanes, multiple colours particularly like purples and yellows and blues can be extremely tricky to remove, even with the most sophisticated of laser technologies. Multiple treatments can be required with Q-switched or pico lasers to get lightening, and indeed some of the tattoo inks cannot be removed. That's why dermatologists always advise patients to think before you ink, because the tattoo may prove to be permanent. You don't have to remove the entirety of a tattoo if your allegiance and appeal of the tattoo changes. Quite common people will tattoo people's names, relatives or loved ones. And human beings, being as they are, can change allegiance to different humans over time, and they want to get rid of the name of a particular important person, and that is a smaller job that can again be done using colour selective lasers. But I would advise always to think carefully both on the sophistication of the design and particularly the multiplicity of colours used before undergoing tattooing.